All right, let's go ahead and get started. If you're here for the RPKI tutorial, you're in the right room. Otherwise, you're going to be presented with some information that you may not understand or care about because there's a whole lot of acronyms here. I will tell you that this session is being recorded, so keep that in mind. We do have a center microphone right here if you have any questions, which you may ask during the presentation. This is a tutorial. So if you want to follow along, if you have an ARIN Online account, or even if you don't have an ARIN Online account and you want to actually create ROAs and sign up for RPKI, we can actually accommodate you. Frank Hill, who's in the back, he's now standing up, and then behind him, Lisa Lydell, they can assist you. If you want to create an ARIN Online account, or if you already have an account and you need to be linked to an organization that has resources and you need resources, they can set you up and get you signed into the RPKI system. So while I'm going through the tutorial, if you want to go back there and see one of them and get set up, that'll allow you to actually go into the website and play along. My name is Andy Newton, by the way. I'm the Chief Engineer for ARIN. And we have some other staff members in the audience. If you have any other questions, my boss, Mark Costers, our CTO, is sitting right here. He's also very knowledgeable about RPKI. He also didn't know I was going to single him out. So, on we go. How many people here know what RPKI is, by the way? I mean, how many? So everyone in the audience. This ought to go easily. So RPKI is the routing resource public key infrastructure, and its purpose is to be one of the key building blocks behind routing security on the internet. It's an IETF standard. It's been standardized for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years now. The IETF does continue to refine it, but for the most part, it's already set and done. Within the RPKI, there are 2 different types of objects that you might hear about. There's resource origin authorizations, or ROAs, and then certificate authorities. The RPKI is a standard public key infrastructure, uses X509 technology. So it uses, if you're familiar with certificate authorities and X509 certificates, a lot of that terminology carries over into the RPKI. We're going to give you an ARIN Online overview, and then we're going to actually allow you to walk through creating ROAs and creating a CA in our operational test and evaluation environment. So, so what is the RPKI? I actually just covered part of this. The term resource holders, according to the standards, the documents, actually means any organization that has resources that's been assigned to them. This includes the IANA. Also includes the RIRs, LIRs, but for the purposes of this tutorial, it's really what we're really talking about are ISPs and end users. Come on, let's go. There we go. Again, resource certificates and ROAs. The resource certificates are really when I talked about the certificate authorities. Resource certificate is a CA certificate, and it has what's called RFC 3339 extensions in it. And what that does is that's an extension for X509 certificates that lists all the IP addresses and autonomous system numbers that have been assigned to a resource holder. The ROA, on the other hand, is a subordinate object of a CA certificate or a resource certificate. And what that does is that actually contains the authorization for routing, for route origination. And it lists the set of IPP prefixes and the origin AS number for the authorization itself. So in the RPKI, there are 2 types of CAs. This isn't actually clearly spelled out in the RFCs. But this is kind of an artifact of the ecosystem that has developed. We have what's called hosted CAs and delegated CAs. Hosted CAs are essentially run by the RIRs on behalf of their members. And then delegated CAs are, they're the certificate authorities where the end user or the ISP completely runs their infrastructure for RPKI. Hosted CAs, when you're doing hosted CAs, it's a whole lot easier because the RIRs take on all the hassle of running the certificate authority, doing things like having all the software that continuously updates the rsync repositories, dealing with things like hardware security modules and all the security infrastructure that goes around that. There really is a lot to do when you're running a CA, and so that's why all of the RIRs have taken that responsibility on, if the customers want it. For ARIN, if you want a hosted CA, if you want to be part of the hosted RPKI, you want to have a hosted CA, you have to have resources, either IPv4 or IPv6 resources. Those resources have to be covered by an RSA or an LRSA, and you also have to have an ARIN Online account with POCs, admin and tech POCs linked to the organization that holds the resources. Delegated RPKI is much the same way. You have to have resources, they have to be signed with an RSA, and you have to have an ARIN Online account again. The big difference here is with delegated CAs, you have to exchange what's called an up-down identity with us, and there's a separate protocol with some separate software that you have to run on top of that. Once you've done that, once you've actually got your software running, you exchange a key pair with us, not the actual private key, but you give us your public key, and that's what's called the business PKI in RPKI speak. That's just a separate way for you to sign your requests for certs, certificate signing requests, and so forth with the RIR. So it's not the same key pair that's actually used in the RPKI, but it is a separate key pair. And also, when you're doing that, when you're running your own delegated CA, you're hosting your own repository. Like I said, you're dealing with your own security measures, whether you're going to use a hardware security module or not. And you have to have a repository that's going to have all the objects in there. It has to be refreshed usually 2 to 3 times a day, depending on the parameters you set up for your delegated CA. So a note about ERX. How many people know what ERX is, by the way? Not as many that know about RPKI. Wow. Okay, so ERX, the actual term means early registration resources, I believe. And what ERX is because not all the resources that are allocated by the IANA now fall clearly under a /8 for each RIR. So some of the RIRs manage space that has been delegated for a /8 by the IANA to another RIR. So what this means is, and this is especially relevant for transfers. If you transfer resources from one region to another, it's going to be part of the ERX system. Unfortunately, the way it works today, because of ERX, ARIN cannot sign space that is in ERX that is managed by another RIR. We're looking at fixing that, but that's just an artifact of how the ERX system works and how RPKI works today. There's kind of an impedance mismatch going on right there. This slide, by the way, are there any questions? Am I going through too fast? Everyone can hear me? Good. A CA, all CAs, but ARIN CA, this slide says ARIN CA, but all CAs have in their repositories these types of objects. There's the resource certificates and the ROAs, and then there's also 2 other types of objects which you may not have heard of before. There's a manifest, which is really another signed object. It's a CMS object, if you're familiar with X509 lingo. It's a CMS object which lists a hash of all the files in the repository, and it's there for a denial of existence attack against a repository. And then there's the certificate revocation list, and or commonly called CRLs. CRLs allow a CA operator to prematurely expire a certificate, either the ROA or subordinate certificate authority. So, how many people are creating ARIN Online accounts or don't have one? Getting very... Frank is creating an ARIN Online account. That's a 0. 0, oh, okay. I couldn't see your hand. So I'll skip this page, these slides. assuming that you already have an ARIN Online account, the way you deal with RPKI with ARIN, is you have to log into ARIN Online, select your organization data, and then select your org. And here we're showing the ARIN Ops organization, and ARIN actually has a separate organization in our registration system for our networks and our resources that we use to manage the company. You want to go to Manage RPKI and then select Hosted. If you want to do delegated, you can then scroll down and do delegated as well, but we're going to walk you through doing hosted today because that's the easiest one. Once you do that, you can say have to agree to the terms of use. This is slightly different than the other terms of use within ARIN Online. I know we have a lot of them. This is a separate one specifically for RPKI, and unlike others where you click a checkbox and then say, yes, I want to do this, you actually have to give us your initials right there in this little box. But once you do that, you're good to go. The other thing you have to do is you have to give us a 2048-bit RSA key, and this is a key that we use for asking you when you want to create a ROA. We ask you to sign the ROA request itself, and we're going to walk through that. So here's where you would actually give us the key. You would cut and paste it into this box. If you want to create your own key pair, there's a website here that you can use to go ahead and create your own key pair online. You can cut and paste them, save them into a file. You can also use OpenSSL if you want. We have instructions on our website on how to use OpenSSL to create these key pairs. So you create the key pair. Yes?
You can throw stuff at me later. What happens if I'm a wise guy and puts like other than 2048 bits in? Is it just not supported, or does it throw an error?
I believe we throw an error. Yes.
So it's the only size supported today?
That's correct, and that's the same size that the RPKI in general supports. Even though this is a separate key pair, this is not the key pair used in the RPKI. It's the same. The RFCs for RPKI say 2048, and we decided to go ahead and mimic those. The same is also true if you're doing a delegated CA and you're doing the up-down with us. The key pair used for that also has to be 2048. Although I believe, correct me, I could be wrong about this, I believe that is specified by the IETF. Any other questions?
Just for clarity, will you use the website to generate your key if you're going to be posting this in the OT&E environment?
I did not hear Frank. What is?
Don't do this in production.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Keep in mind, this presentation is geared for the operational test and evaluation environment. If you're going to be creating a key pair for production use, this website's interesting, but I wouldn't use it. I would use OpenSSL. Anyway, so you give us your key pair. I've lost my place here. And you hit submit. And what happens after that is you'll get a ticket number, and the ticket number will actually, it takes a couple of minutes for it to process. The request actually goes to our registration services help desk, and they will review your request because they're double checking whether you're signed under an RSA or an LRSA, and all sorts of other things like that. But usually it's a pretty straightforward process. And then once you've given us your public key, you're good. You're part of the RPKI. As I mentioned, the reason you're giving us you're creating a separate key pair and you're giving us these, you're giving us the public key is because our hosted RPKI and ours is different than all the other RIRs. The other RIRs, if you're familiar with them, do not require this. But ours requires you to sign a request for generating a ROA in our hosted RPKI. There's actually nothing we can do to circumvent that. We've actually programmed our hardware security modules so that they will only sign ROAs if there's an accompanied signed request to do so. This prevents anyone on staff from actually going in and putting ROAs in the system ourselves. The way the ROA request works, and you can shoot me if you find this too boring, but it's basically you're taking this blob of text that you see up here and you're signing it with that key that you just gave us. And this ROA signing request essentially mimics what goes into a ROA. The version number is just a version number of the text you're giving us. There's a timestamp. This timestamp also goes into the ROA. The name of the ROA, the AS, the origin AS you want in the ROA, and then the validity date, validity start date, validity end date. And I'm sorry, this timestamp does not go in the ROA. This is to prevent replay attacks against our system. Validity start date, validity end date, and those are the validity dates for the ROA itself. Prefixes and the prefix and the max length that go on the ROA itself. So those vertical bars are the pipe symbol, so you can all do that in text. There also is another way of doing this, and you can actually do this in ARIN Online itself via what we call browser signing, and we'll go into that in just a second. Browser signing is a lot easier. What you do is you just go here, and this is the page that you would see in ARIN Online if you're doing this. There's the browser sign tab, and then there's the sign tab. If you clipped over to the sign tab, that's where you have to go put in that text, and then you have to give us the signature for the text that you just signed. If you do the browser signed, you just enter all the information in here. You have to tell the browser where your private key is, and the JavaScript in your browser will actually do all the RSA signing for you, and then you can submit it. Does everyone understand that? No questions about that? All right. So, if we want to do the walkthrough, you can go to the OT&E environment, and the OT&E environment is completely it's a playground. We do encourage people to use it all the time for testing their software against our systems, but we're using it today in case you wanted to create your own ROAs and you wanted to play around. So, any questions so far? That's really the end of the presentation. We can walk through doing this live if you want to. Yeah, you want to walk through it, or yeah, you have a question? All right. So, let me find my browser. So one thing about the OT&E environment, if you go, there's a web page for it, obviously. It's www.ote.arin.net. Everyone here in this room is able to access it because we've opened it up to the network that the meeting is using. If you're back at your house or your company, your day job trying to do this, you're free to use the OT&E environment. You just have to tell us what network addresses you're coming from. We don't allow the general public to go browse this environment for security reasons, but we'll open it up if you ask us to. So you can send us a request, and we'll give you access to the OT&E environment. One thing this is not clearly showing is that if you are on the OT&E environment, there's these blue bars on the side. You can barely see it here because of the resolution of the screen, but there's these blue bars on the side. Unlike the regular website, you would not see that. And even if you could see it, it would say OT&E kind of in this vertical text on the side. So let me log in. The other thing about the OT&E environment is that what we do every month is we take the production data from the production system, we sanitize it, and then we put it in the OT&E environment. So if you have a login in the regular production environment, that login will work here as well. And no, quit doing that. All right. So here I've logged into ARIN Online. I already have an org.
This is being recorded, so you have a question.
Yeah.
So in the OT&E environment, does it have all the same agreement pieces to it? And if we agree to something in the OT&E, are we actually legally agreeing to it?
That's a very good question. My gut reaction is no, but I would have to ask one of our lawyers. Maybe he might be able to answer that. I'm sure he doesn't like being put on the spot right now. But I honestly, I don't know the answer to that. It is a test environment. It's not a production environment. While the repository is available, like the RPKI repository, there's even a WHOIS service based on this. While that is available, it's not available to the broader public. It's only available to people who've signed up for OT&E. This area is really meant for people to play around with. So to whatever degree you're signing up, you're agreeing to legal notices. It's not meant for you for production use. So I think if Michael wants to stand up and talk about this, he can, but he didn't have to. But as far as I know, they do count, but I'm not sure if he ever went to court, things would really matter that much. So, Sandy, did you have a question?
I think you got to my question.
Oh, okay. So here, what we have here is two organizations that I already had an ARIN Online account. With that ARIN Online account, I created points of contacts, and then I created organizations. Actually, the two that I've got linked into my account are ARIN Ops, and that's a real organization that's in the registration database, that's in the production system. You can go look it up in WHOIS if you want to. It's out there. And then I also, because Lisa and I were playing around having some good fun today, we created another org called Andy's House of Network Fun, doing business as the IP Packets Are Hilarious company. So I can click on that. It brings up the resources, or brings up the organization, and I can go over here to manage RPKI. Actually, let me go over to the set of resources here. So here's the network we already have. And I believe this one is already covered by RPKI. So if I go to manage RPKI, it's sitting down here. I can go view ROAs, and I've already got one, right? If I want to, I can, I don't think I have any other resources to put in. I guess I can go ahead and do another one for that. So let me create another ROA for this. We'll call it test 2. Now, the thing about a ROA is that the prefixes have to be yours, but the origin AS does not. You can put in any origin AS you want. And because I can't remember the origin ASs that I have listed here, I'm just going to put in 2. And I forgot the resources we have. Nope, that's not it. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to back out here and figure out what the... Frank warned me about this earlier. He said, oh, go ahead and make sure you cut and paste this before you go in. All right, now I want to go to Manage RPKI. Create a ROA. Because I was playing around earlier and already had a key loaded, and it's not for this organization. Actually, I can't remember. I'm going to go ahead and remove the key and then go ahead and attempt to get it again. So the key you load in on this page is, you have to tell the browser about on this page, is your private key, by the way, because that's what's signing the request. You put the file in there, it says key loaded, and it does check to make sure it's a valid key and it makes sense and whatnot. Then you just hit sign and continue. And here's the page where it's actually asking you to verify. So that first page where I said sign and continue, that actually told the browser to go ahead and run the calculations to go ahead and sign the request. This is the page where you submit it. So here's all the information. Here's the signature. Here's all the information that goes into the ROA. And now I just hit sign. This is a ticketed request in case these operations take around 5 to 10 seconds, depending on what's going on with the system, to be fulfilled. But I can go ahead and look at that ticket. Oh wow! And in the meantime, while I was talking, it actually went ahead and did that. So that ROA has been created. So it created the ROA, and the status of this ticket is processed and closed. So now I can go back over here, get back into the RPKI. Oh, so hold on. And view my ROAs. And there we go. Our ROA number 2 was created. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Go ahead.
So you said you can put any AS in this ROA that you want, but the prefix has to be yours.
Mm-hmm.
So in this OT environment, there is some relationship to actual reality?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So only those people who have received address space from ARIN can participate in the OTE environment,
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. Does that include people who do not have membership agreements, like customers of ISPs who have? And
So it has to
legacy
be,
space?
yeah. You're asking if it's an allocation or assignment below an ISP or something like that that's been
Yeah.
made by an ISP, and that
Or-
would be.
Or the legacy space that's been
So the allocation or the assignment has to be direct with us. So
Okay.
it cannot be space that an ISP has subsequently allocated or assigned to you. It has to be
Right.
direct.
Right.
It can be legacy as long as it's signed by an LRS. The space is signed
Right.
by LRSA.
Right. But it has to be under agreement. Okay.
Yes, has to be under agreement.
Second question.
Mhm.
The NANOG recently, there was a RIPE presentation, and one of the things they talked about was that they're discovering that operators aren't being careful about the ROAs that they create. Sometimes they kind of disenfranchise their customers and make their customer announcements look invalid. And because of that, when you try to create a ROA, they say, here's all the routes that would become invalid if you created that ROA. And I know other implementations kind of do the same thing. I didn't see that show up. Is that just because it's the OTE environment? Would that show up?
No, our production system doesn't do that either.
Mm.
We don't go look at the routing system and suggest the ROAs for you. We let you.
Right.
Basically, this is a little more. You have to know what your routes are, what route authorizations you want to put into the system.
Right.
It doesn't do that for you.
But this isn't anything about what you're announcing. It's what your customers are announcing of stuff you've suballocated to them, and you're about to make their announcements look invalid.
Okay, yes, that's correct, but we don't do that either.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Right,
Maybe
does it?
CSP.
Huh?
Submit that as a suggestion.
The comment from the community is that I should submit that as a suggestion. Probably would come better from someone who's a member. No? Okay.
No, you can
All
do
right.
it. Anyone can submit it. So, any other questions? Was this thrilling? Everyone's excited. Everyone's going to go out, rush out right now, and get their org onto the RPKI, right? Right? Every one of you, right? All right. Okay, I guess that's it. Unless anyone has any other questions, we'll go ahead and end this. Oh, what? Maybe Nate's got a question.
Hello, Andy. Thank you for the presentation. Nate Davis, Chief Operating Officer with ARIN. David, can you re-ask your question regarding acceptance of terms and so forth?
So at the microphone.
Yeah.
In the operational test environment, if I accept terms and conditions, am I doing that in reality or not?
Okay, so I'm going to make our Associate General Counsel very nervous right now, because I haven't consulted with him on this. But, so as Andy indicated, it's a test environment. It's not meant for production. We take whatever you actually submit in production actually is what the record is, okay? I will also add that the OT&E environment actually gets refreshed every month. So anything that you agreed to goes away in 1 month at most. So that's what I wanted to close that out with you. So does it answer your question?
I think so. I'll take it up with.
Okay.
Can I answer your question from a slightly different angle?
Can you use the microphone? Yeah.
Yeah, because I want to be on the record being a wise guy. What else is new?
David, if you use information from the OT&E environment in production, every single one of your AC colleagues will be an expert witness and say you deserve whatever happens to you.
I'm not talking about you. There's this I word in the terms and conditions.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, everyone, thanks for coming, I appreciate it. And I believe the V4 depletion, I don't know if it's a tutorial or I don't know if we have to have a tutorial on depleting IPv4, but there's a IPv4 depletion talk coming up next, so thank you.